seen them before. Calm, focused, confident. Paranormal investigators walking into abandoned hospitals, cursed houses, forests where people vanish, and rooms where the air itself feels wrong. They carry cameras, EMF meters, voice recorders, and years of experience. On screen, they appear fearless, almost untouchable by the darkness they investigate. But here is the truth few ever talk about. Bravery on camera does not mean the absence of fear. Sometimes, it hides it. What if everything you thought you knew about paranormal investigators was incomplete? What if the people who chase shadows and whispers are just as vulnerable as the rest of us may be? Even more so. Tonight, we peel back the curtain, not on ghosts, not on demons, but on the people who go looking for them. Welcome to True Terror Files Official, the channel where we don't just explore the unknown, we explore what it does to the human mind. If you're fascinated by true paranormal encounters, psychological fear, and stories that stay with you long after the screen goes dark, make sure you subscribe, because what we're about to share is rarely spoken aloud. Paranormal investigation is often framed as curiosity-driven science, mixed with adventure. But behind every investigation is a human nervous system responding to isolation, darkness, expectation, and the possibility that something unseen is watching back. The truth is, many investigators enter locations confident and leave carrying something invisible, fear that doesn't show up on equipment. These are not stories about jump scares or dramatic reactions. These are moments when trained investigators felt a deep, primal terror that had nothing to do with evidence and everything to do with instinct. Moments when their bodies reacted before their minds could explain. Moments when they realized that knowing about the paranormal doesn't make you immune to it. Tonight, we're sharing what usually stays off camera. The silent pauses, the shaking hands, the internal battles to stay composed. Because when the investigators themselves are afraid, something has gone very wrong. And as you listen, ask yourself this question: if the experts are scared, what does that mean for the rest of us? One veteran investigator described a night he still refuses to revisit. The location was nothing special, an ordinary-looking rural house with a long history of complaints. No dramatic backstory, no viral reputation. That's what made it worse. Around 2:40 a.m., his equipment went silent. No static, no interference, just silence. Then he felt its unmistakable sensation of being watched, not from one direction, but from everywhere. He didn't run, he didn't scream, he froze. His heart rate spiked, his hands went cold, and his mind flooded with a single thought: you are not welcome here. No apparition appeared, no voice spoke. Yet the fear was so intense, he later admitted it felt personal, as if something had reached inside him rather than the room. Another investigator, known for her skepticism, recalled conducting an overnight investigation in an abandoned medical facility. She had spent years debunking claims, staying rational, grounded. But that night, while reviewing footage alone in a hallway, she heard footsteps matching her own pace behind her. When she stopped, they stopped. When she turned around, there was nothing. The fear didn't come from seeing something. It came from realizing something was responding. Investigators often say the scariest moments are not when something happens, but when something almost happens. When the air changes. When your body reacts before your brain catches up. When logic fails and instinct takes control. Several professionals describe the same physical reactions: tight chests, nausea, tunnel vision, and an overwhelming urge to leave immediately. Not because of danger they could see, because every internal alarm was screaming. And perhaps the most unsettling detail: many of these moments weren't captured on camera. No evidence, no proof, just the memory and the fear that followed them home. These are the nights investigators don't include in highlight reels. The moments that don't trend online, because how do you explain fear when there's nothing to show? Fear doesn't always end when the investigation does. For many paranormal investigators, the real consequences begin afterward, when the lights are back on. The footage is archived, and silence returns. Some describe sleeping with lights on for weeks. Others report heightened anxiety, vivid dreams, or an unexplained sense of unease in familiar places. One investigator admitted that after a particularly intense case, they avoided mirrors for months not because of superstition, but because they felt watched even in their own reflection. Another described sudden panic attacks triggered by silence, something that had never affected them before entering the field. Coping mechanisms vary. Some investigators lean harder into rational explanations, reviewing data obsessively to reassure themselves. Others take breaks, sometimes permanent ones. A surprising number quietly step away from certain types of cases entirely. Private residences, child-related hauntings, or locations involving extreme emotional trauma. There are lines many investigators won't cross anymore, not because they doubt the paranormal, but because they understand the psychological cost. The fear doesn't always come from what you encounter. Sometimes it comes from what the encounter awakens inside you. This lingering impact is rarely discussed publicly. Admitting fear can feel like admitting weakness in a field built on credibility. But the truth is, ignoring psychological fallout doesn't make it disappear. It embeds itself deeper. And that raises an uncomfortable question. What is the true price of repeatedly stepping into the unknown? There's a common assumption that repeated exposure builds immunity, that if you've seen enough dark places, fear eventually fades. But paranormal investigators often report the opposite. Experience sharpens awareness, and awareness makes fear more precise. The most terrifying moments aren't dramatic. They're subtle, unpredictable, personal. They don't follow patterns or rules, and that's exactly why they're so unsettling. When something behaves outside expectation, expertise offers no shield. Fear is not the enemy of investigation, it's evidence of humanity. And in many cases, fear is what tells investigators that something is genuinely wrong. Not paranormal necessarily, but deeply unsettling on a human level. The truth is, fear isn't about ignorance, it's about vulnerability. And paranormal investigation places people directly in situations where control is an illusion. No amount of preparation can guarantee safety, psychological or otherwise. These professionals don't fear ghosts as much as they fear losing certainty. Because when the world stops behaving predictably, fear fills the gap. And that's something no amount of experience can erase. Paranormal investigators carry stories they rarely tell, not because they're hiding secrets, but because some experiences resist language. The unseen price of chasing shadows isn't just exhaustion or criticism. It's the quiet burden of knowing that curiosity sometimes comes with consequences. These individuals aren't thrill seekers immune to fear. They are explorers of uncertainty, paying a psychological toll most viewers never consider. And perhaps that's what makes their stories so powerful, not the entities they encounter, but the courage to keep going despite fear. As viewers, we owe them empathy, not awe, not skepticism, empathy. Because when the investigators themselves are afraid, it tells us something important. The unknown is still unknown, and some doors, once opened, never fully close. If this story made you think differently about paranormal investigation, subscribe to True Terror Files Official. We don't just chase terror, we understand it. And remember, sometimes The most terrifying thing isn't what's out there watching us. It's realizing we're not as prepared as we thought.